Today, the great Barack Obama, the hero of the left, the hero of the Democratic Party, the man who gets up and speaks, it's, oh my God, Black Jesus is in the house today, right? He goes and campaigns, and this is the worst loss of his career, my opinion. This is what I think. Worst loss of his, I think the worst night of his life was November 5th, November 6th, midnight. Worst day of his career. Horrible. You're seeing right now speculation with him, Jennifer Aniston. His wife wasn't at the Jimmy Carter, funeral.
Curiosity about the case, and now Donald J. Trump is asking his Department of Justice to show full transparency, and somehow that's a criticism of Donald J. Trump and not Barack Obama and George W. Bush. If you want to criticize the people who aren't showing full transparency, you ought to go after the administrations that went easy on Jeffrey Epstein, the administrations...
The tale of a leader who promised the moon but delivered little more than shadows has become one of the greatest political illusions of our era. Built on soaring speeches, carefully crafted optics, and uncritical media adoration, the image of Barack Obama seemed unshakable until reality inevitably caught up. That's where Patrick Bet-David and J.D. Vance step in, dismantling the glossy exterior to reveal Obama not as the flawless visionary he marketed himself to be, but as a master salesman of branding over real substance.
But think, you're Obama, okay? First go from the Obama's lens.
Okay.
Obamas are sitting there having to hear people compare Kamala to Obama.
Crazy.
Do you know what that does to Obama? Do you know Obama is sitting there saying, shut the that's what Obama's saying internally, right?
First of all, I don't believe, whether you agree with me or disagree with me, whether you agree with Donald Trump or disagree with him, I don't believe in hectoring voters. I believe in persuading voters. Your support is not something I'm given or something I'm owed. It's something you got to go out there and work for. So one, I just don't like the tone of going in. I mean, look, the better question for Barack Obama or anybody to ask is not why black men. It's not how dare you not vote for Kamala Harris. It's maybe they're thinking about voting for Donald Trump because they're sick of being censored. They're sick of being...
The illusion of Barack Obama's greatness has always rested more on polished presentation than on tangible performance. Patrick Bet-David wastes no time tearing away that glossy facade, noting how the so-called visionary governed the nation for 8 years as if delivering one endless TED Talk. Lofty rhetoric was abundant, but meaningful delivery remained scarce. Obama could mesmerize audiences with elegant speeches, yet the fine print of his record paints a starkly different picture. Endless wars slogged on, the middle class continued to erode, and the deep political rifts he vowed to heal only widened into lasting fractures. It's the classic bait-and-switch of modern politics. Sell hope, deliver bureaucracy, then hide behind eloquence when promised results never appear.
Like, go back to it. You can do that. We don't have to agree politically. I still want to find a way for us to be able to hear each other out and disagree on policies, and I want to see them be together. I don't root for them to not make it. You want to see them make it. However, body language, these guys haven't been living together for a long time. I mean, when he's going and having breakfast with his girls and the wife is not there and he's going to funerals and traditional presidential, things that you have to be part of, and she's not there at Jimmy Carter's funeral. Maybe not Trump's, I get it, but Carter's.
J.D. Vance takes the critique even further, slicing into Obama's carefully curated image as a transformational leader. In Vance's view, the only thing truly transformed during Obama's tenure was the Democratic Party itself, reduced to a celebrity fan club where style eclipsed substance. He reminds audiences that Obama's signature achievement wasn't enduring reform but a convoluted healthcare law so riddled with flaws it became a political punching bag for nearly a decade. Rather than uniting the nation as promised, Obama presided over an era that ignited the populist backlash still shaping American politics today. Instead of a savior, Vance argues, he served as a catalyst for the turbulence and division that followed.
Well, I think the only thing the far left really responds to is power. The thing that they're actually going to be responsive to is the recognition that there are consequences on the other side. If they get off scot-free, if they're never investigated, if they're never prosecuted when they violated the law, then they're just going to come back and do the exact same thing again. And there are a few different ways, of course. So it's the big tech companies that were censoring conservatives. They've got to know that's not going to be allowed.
And then Bet-David digs even deeper into Obama's fixation with legacy, revealing how much of his presidency seemed fueled by a fear of being forgotten. Nearly every decision appeared crafted not to solve pressing problems, but to cement a personal monument. From perfectly staged photographs to meticulously choreographed interviews, the White House often felt more like a Netflix production than a functioning administration. The bitter irony, Bet David notes, is that in working so hard to script his own greatness, Obama exposed just how shallow it truly was. For all the glossy magazine covers and best-selling memoirs, the actual scoreboard of measurable progress remains shockingly thin.
She sounds like the way MAGA feels with Trump when he talks about Epstein. How upset they are at Trump about Epstein. The Democrats are upset at Obama because they're saying you're doing this. They're putting the responsibility on him, right? On the messaging here. Adam, your thoughts on this when you see, what Whoopi, Obama...
Vance piles on, reminding everyone that Obama's foreign policy failures weren't mere missteps, but outright disasters with lasting consequences. From the infamous Red Line debacle in Syria to the disastrous handling of Libya, Obama mastered the art of leading from behind, a style that left allies confused, adversaries emboldened, and the world stage questioning America's resolve. Behind the polished speeches and lofty promises stood a leader seemingly more concerned with safeguarding his personal brand than projecting real strength. The cost of that weakness, Vance argues, is still being paid today in a far more dangerous and unstable world.
For 4 years, under Joe Biden's Department of Justice, the media didn't give a damn about the Epstein files or about the Epstein case. For literally 20 years, the story about this scumbag, and he is a scumbag pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein, he's dead now, but for 20 years, you had Obama and George W. Bush's Department of Justice go easy on this guy. They didn't fully investigate the case.
Patrick Bet David hammers home the cultural side of Obama's reign. While he was celebrated as the cool, modern president, with the Spotify playlists, celebrity appearances, and endless late-night comedy skits, the reality that ordinary Americans were still being left behind rarely made the highlight reel. The cool factor may have made him a star, but it never made him effective. Bet David drives the point that the presidency isn't a fashion show or a branding contest. It's a job measured in results, not retweets. And by that measure, Obama looks far less like the legend his admirers imagine and far more like an empty suit wrapped in flawless marketing. J.D. Vance takes the opportunity to underscore how Obama's elitism poisoned his politics. For all the rhetoric about empathy and hope, his presidency often felt like a performance staged exclusively for an audience wealthy enough to applaud.
Visually, he's changed. I like to say visually as opposed to from the look standpoint, because of course looks don't matter anymore in politics. Looks don't matter. It doesn't make any difference because we want to be politically correct, but they do matter. But he's changed. His look has changed actually quite a bit. I haven't seen him in a long time.
And by the way, Rob, I think that's even 4 years ago. I think it's even more than it is
Well,
today.
no, but the statement he just made was a couple of days ago. And
it was a couple of days ago. And it's similar to the statement he made back in 2012 when he told business owners, you didn't build that. Remember when he said that? I don't know if you remember that whole comment. I think this is the speech, Rob, if you want to play this.
You got a business. That you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
This becomes a pattern of...
David refuses to let Obama off the hook on economics either. He dismantles the myth of Obama as a master steward of recovery, pointing out that the so-called economic comeback under his watch was one of the weakest in modern history. The middle class remained stagnant, job growth crawled at a snail's pace, and national debt ballooned to historic levels. The supposed genius of Obama's economic policies looks less like brilliance and more like luck paired with relentless money printing. And while the press worked overtime to spin it as a triumph, the people living paycheck to paycheck weren't buying the story. J.D. Vance closes in on the hypocrisy theme, showing how Obama built his career condemning the politics of division while quietly thriving on it. The bitter punchline is that for all his lofty calls to move past partisanship, Obama ultimately left the country more fractured, frustrated, and divided than ever.
How many guys saw the recent movie Leave the World Behind? Anybody saw that movie there? Oh, okay, yeah, all these... Am I watching a movie or is this a documentary realistic thing? And then I'm seeing Mark Zuckerberg just spent $100 million building a house in Hawaii with a nuclear bunker. What does he know that the rest of the world doesn't know about? Talk about the timing. Oh, accidentally, coincidentally, a week after that movie comes out, a new movie comes out. What's the name of that movie? Civil War. leave the world behind. Our power grid in America hasn't been updated. 75% of it hasn't been updated in 50 years. And you're kind of talking about that. Then you're pinning whites against blacks. There's a line in the movie that says, Dad, you know if something goes down, we can't trust these white people. I know that's something both you and Mom agree on. Why do you put that line in the movie, Barack? And you were helping.
Patrick Bet-David strips away the carefully manufactured image to reveal the uncomfortable core truth. Obama was less a president and far more a polished performer. His greatest strength was never in genuine leadership, but in relentless selling hope, selling change, and ultimately selling himself. Yet when the cameras stopped rolling and the applause faded into silence, the hollowness of that pitch became impossible to ignore. His presidency stands as a masterclass in political branding rather than meaningful results. And that is why his legacy, despite years of media adoration and endless fanfare, feels more like an elaborate mirage than a lasting monument.
The Obama office responds to Trump's accusation of treason outrageous. Let me read this to you, and Thomas Ellsworth, I'm coming to you first, so please be prepared with all your notes.
Ready.
Obama's office spokesperson, Patrick Rodenbush, great first name, rejected the office of the Director of National Intelligence. Reports claim that senior Obama administration officials orchestrated the Russia collusion hoax, stating, out of respect for the office of the presidency, our office does not normally dignify the constant nonsense and misinformation flowing out of this White House.
The destruction here isn't simply about tearing down a political figure. It's about shattering a myth sold to America for far too long. Obama longed to be remembered as the man who redefined history itself. Yet when the smoke clears and the lights fade, he appears less like a statesman and more like a politician who mastered presentation while fumbling the hard reality of leadership. Thanks to Patrick Bet-David and J.D. Vance, that illusion isn't merely exposed, it's eviscerated. Barack Obama was marketed as a political revolution in a tailored suit, the cool intellectual destined to reset America and usher in a golden era. Instead, his presidency became a masterclass in branding over substance, a slick Netflix trailer stretched into 8 exhausting years of hype. Bet-David and Vance rip through the glossy packaging to reveal exactly what critics had warned about: the promise of bipartisan healing replaced by entrenched division, the dream of economic renewal reduced to sluggish recovery, and the call for accountability drowned beneath a tide of eloquent excuses.
The one thing I wanted to show is the following. So you know how you talked about Jerome Powell, what an easy job. You come once a month and he said we're going to increase the rates.
Greatest job there is.
I think this is the one thing they don't talk about. So Barack Obama got elected November 4th. Okay, quantitative easing started November 26th.
Right.
And it stayed for 8 years until you got elected.
Right.
So if you look at that low, pretty much 0% interest rate.
Right.
And then you get elected, right? If you go to January 2016, Rob, for the audience to see that. And then from there, one by one, rates are going up. And then Biden comes in, goes back down to 0 to try to save the economy. And then, you know, the rest is obviously history.
Right.
But do you think the average person knows, like, the impact of going to 0%? How much does that positively help the impact?
Obama's strength was always in presentation, yet even that polished charm wore thin as voters realized they were watching the same script on repeat. A theater of inspiration could no longer disguise the stagnation beneath the spotlight. Patrick Bet-David tears into this illusion from another angle, exposing how Obama's detachment made him more of a commentator than a commander. He wasn't the leader in the trenches fighting for progress. He was the man in the balcony, narrating how tough things looked below. When the country demanded bold, decisive action, Obama delivered only cautious half-steps. Healthcare reform, his supposed crown jewel, devolved into a bureaucratic maze where premiums soared, coverage narrowed, and lofty promises evaporated. Instead of liberation, families faced higher costs and fewer options, all packaged under the banner of historic achievement. The foreign policy chapter fares no better. Obama sold himself as a global peacemaker, yet the world quickly learned that the brand didn't match the results.
I'm going to go to the next topic here, which is Adam's top topic, talking about Obama saying every man needs a gay friend. So Obama goes
Barack,
on his wife's podcast, okay? And they're sitting there having this conversation, and it opens, they covered a lot of different things. Right off the bat, they talked about the divorce. Hey, aren't we supposed to be getting a divorce and all this stuff? Just tell me if this seems like they woke up together in the same bed this morning, the last week.
Libya collapsed into chaos after his intervention. Syria descended into a humanitarian nightmare under his watch, and the infamous Red Line dissolved into diplomatic fog. His administration achieved the extraordinary feat of sounding decisive in speeches while remaining paralyzed in action. Patrick Bet-David underscores how this wasn't prudence, it was paralysis disguised as wisdom. J.D. Vance digs deeper into the hypocrisy of Obama's legacy. The man who promised to lift working-class communities instead courted elite cultural circles, saving his true passion for media appearances, celebrity endorsements, and academic adoration. Rather than using his immense platform to champion the working poor or confront the crises he left unresolved, Obama slid seamlessly into the role of cultural celebrity, more at home on magazine covers than in the gritty trenches of governance.
The last point I want to make is, I got to say, and shocker, newsflash here, I've defended Kamala Harris once, I'm about to defend Barack Obama once. So set to the side the hectoring and the tone of Obama when he went in and talking about black voters, like whatever. Obviously, I just criticized that. You know what I was watching him talk? You know what I thought to myself is, agree or disagree, and obviously I disagreed with about 99% of what he did when he was in office. He had substance, and Kamala Harris.
Netflix deals, lucrative memoir tours, and carefully staged public appearances became the signature of a man more interested in polishing his image than leading a genuine movement. The irony is sharp and unforgiving. The president who warned against celebrity politics ultimately became its most skilled practitioner, profiting from the very stagecraft he once condemned. J.D. Vance ridicules the glaring gap between Obama's lofty promises and his tangible results. He vowed transparency, yet oversaw scandals like the IRS targeting debacle and the endless stonewalling over Benghazi. He vowed unity, yet left America's political climate more bitterly polarized than ever, paving the road for the very populist backlash he claimed to resist. Far from being an antidote to division, Obama acted as its accelerant, soothing audiences with elegant speeches while fueling deeper distrust beneath the surface. Patrick Bet-David targets the hollowness of Obama's economic rhetoric, noting how he preached fairness while presiding over a Wall Street-driven recovery that left ordinary workers struggling in stagnation.
The banks, the president is really preoccupied with this, and rightfully so. And of course, you've got to pay the lawfare back in kind. You've got to say to the Comeys and the Brennans of the world, of course, you got to follow the law. You can only prosecute people when they actually broke the law. But we know that a lot of people broke the law in the last administration, and they've got to face real justice, not just words, not just getting hauled before a committee in Capitol Hill. If people broke the law.
The banks were rescued, the elites flourished, and the stock market soared, yet the average household remained stuck in economic stagnation. Hope and change never reached the kitchen table. What seeped through instead was a widening chasm between the America Obama glorified in speeches and the America living paycheck to paycheck. J.D. Vance spares no punches, ridiculing Obama's obsession with polishing his legacy. The former president appeared less concerned with the real-world consequences of his decisions and far more fixated on how future historians would describe them. But history doesn't lie. More than a decade later, Obamacare is still divisive, foreign policy crises have deepened public distrust, and the much-promised unity dissolved into sharper fractures. The myth of Obama as a transformative leader now lingers only in the carefully curated narratives of academia and media elites who mistake eloquence for effectiveness. Patrick Bet-David dismantles this illusion by emphasizing how Obama's success rested on perception rather than measurable results. In the end, Bet-David and Vance don't just strip away the polish, they expose the hollow core of a presidency that confused applause with achievement, leaving frustration in place of genuine transformation.